Welcome to Spiritual Calisthenics. Christ is in our midst. On July 15, we commemorate the holy martyrs Cyricus and his mother Julitta, Saint Vladimir equal to the apostles of Kiev, the finding of the head of Saint Matrona of Chios, Saint Donald and his 9 daughters, and Saint Swithin, Bishop of Winchester. Regarding Saint Vladimir equal to the apostles of Kiev, grandson of Saint Olga, Saint Vladimir ascended the throne of Kiev in 980. Though a zealous idolater, he was illumined by the grace of God, accepted the Christian faith, and completely changed his ways. He was baptized in Cherson in 988, receiving the name Basil. He came forth from the font not only healed of the blindness lately afflicting him, but also from being passionate and warlike. He became meek, peaceable, and exceedingly godly. Whereas his grandmother had refused marriage with the emperor in Constantinople, as we mentioned on July 11, he married Anna, sister of Emperors Basil and Constantine, and was accompanied home by priests from Constantinople. Diligently seeking to spread Christianity throughout his realm like a new Constantine, he destroyed the idols, having the chief deity Perun scourged and then cast into the Dnieper River, and summoned all his subjects to holy baptism, and reposed in peace in the year 1015. Thou wast like a merchant who seeketh a godly pearl, O glorious sovereign Vladimir, sitting on the height of the throne of the mother of cities, God-protected Kiev, searching and sending to the imperial city to know the Orthodox faith, thou didst find Christ, the priceless pearl, who chose thee as a second Paul, and as he shake off thy spiritual and bodily blindness in the holy font. Wherefore, we who are your people celebrate thy falling asleep, pray that thy land of Russia be saved, and that Orthodox people be granted peace and great mercy. Like the great apostle Paul, O most glorious Vladimir, in thy maturity thou didst forsake all zeal for idols and a childish sophism. As a full-grown man, thou wast adorned with the royal purple of divine baptism. And now, as thou standest in joy in the presence of Christ our Savior, pray that thy land of Russia be saved, and to the Orthodox people be granted peace and great mercy. Some additional dialogue about Prince Vladimir. Prince Vladimir began to recognize that pagan gods were unable to unify the Rus, that is, the people of Russia. Becoming interested in the question of faith while planning a campaign against the Eastern Roman Empire, he sent embassies to the neighboring states of Bulgaria, Khazar, and Byzantium to examine their beliefs. The ambassadors returned, declaring that the Islam of Bulgaria is too unhappy a religion to adopt. The fact that Islam bans fermented drink and pork does not set well with the Russians, who cannot imagine life without either, especially the drink. Vladimir himself rejected Judaism of his Khazar neighbors, for he said that the Jewish laws of Jerusalem and its temple proves that God had forsaken them. As for German Catholicism, the ambassadors describe it as plain and dour. Their impression of the faith of their Orthodox neighbors to the south is altogether different. Upon attending a service at the glorious Hagia Sophia Cathedral in Constantinople, they report this famous statement: "And we went into the Greek lands, and we were led into a place where they served their God, and we did not know where we were, on heaven or on earth, and do not know how to tell about this. All we know is that God lives there with people, and their service is better than in any other country. We cannot forget that beauty, since each person, if he eats something sweet, will not take something bitter afterwards, so we cannot remain any more in paganism." This was the testimony that led Vladimir to say, "I will embrace the religion of my grandmother Olga." Regarding Saint Julitta and Cyricus the martyrs, Saint Julitta was from the city of Iconio. Fearing the persecution of Diocletian, she took her son Cyricus, who was 3 years old, and departed for Seleucia. But finding the same evil there, she went over to Tarsus in Cilicia, where the ruler arrested her. He took her son from her, and tried with flatteries to draw the youth to himself. But the little one, in his childish voice, called the name of Christ, and kicked the ruler in the belly so hard that the tyrant became enraged, and cast him down the steps of the tribunal. In this manner, the child's head was crushed, and he gave up his spirit. As for his blessed mother, she first endured many torments, and finally was beheaded in the year 296. Blessed Julitta, the Christ God's rational ewe lamb, with holy Cyricus, her 3-year-old offspring, stood at the judgment seat, and with authority and great boldness they proclaimed the true faith of the Christians. In no wise were they afraid of the threats of the tyrants, and now in heaven, wearing precious crowns, they both rejoice as they stand before Christ our God. As the martyrs of Christ, the chaste Julitta in her arms bare Cyricus. She cried out in the stadium with manful courage and boundless joy, "Thou art strength of the martyrs, O Christ my God." Saint Julitta, in like manner to Saint Sophia, shows herself to be a true mother in Christian virtue, raising her child to love Christ with all of his soul and with all of his heart. And only as a 3-year-old, Saint Cyricus shows himself to be more manly than any gladiator in the arena of faith. Through their intercessions, may Christ our God bring us peace. The readings are according to the feast of Saint Cyricus and his mother Julitta. From St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. Brethren, when I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. St. Paul says this as sort of a double entendre because St. Paul was educated by the great Gamaliel. He was one of the smartest Israelites of his time, and yet he considered his time before Christ childish, immature, incorrect. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall understand fully, even as I have been fully understood. Meaning that even now, Paul doesn't fully understand Christ. But in the end, when he is with God in paradise, he will understand him. And the reason why this reading is so important is because little Cyricus is a 3-year-old child, and yet he understands Christ better than almost any of us. So faith, hope, love, abide. These 3, but the greatest of these is love. And as I said earlier, Saint Sophia is allegorical in this because she, in raising her daughters, made sure that they had those key virtues of faith, hope, and love. Make love, selfless love, agape, your aim, and earnestly desire the spiritual gifts, especially that you may prophesy. Prophecy meaning to be able to speak with God. For one who speaks in tongues speaks not to men but to God, for no one understands him, but he utters mysteries in the Spirit. On the other hand, he who prophesies speaks to men for their upbuilding and encouragement and consolation. He who speaks in tongues edifies himself, but he who prophesies edifies the church. Now I want you all to speak in tongues, but even more to prophecy. He who prophesies is greater than he who speaks in tongues, unless someone interprets, so that the church might be edified. Meaning that speaking in tongues, being able to speak a language that no one understands, doesn't benefit anybody. The Gospel according to St. Matthew. At that time the collectors of the half-shekel tax went up to Peter and said, "Does not your teacher pay the tax?" He said, "Yes." When he came home, Jesus spoke to him first, saying, "What do you think, Simon? From whom do kings of the earth take toll or tribute? From their sons or from others?" And when he said, "From others," Jesus said to him, "Then the sons are free. However, not to give offense to them, go to the sea and cast a hook, and take the first fish that comes up. When you open its mouth, you will find a shekel. Take that and give it to them for me and for yourself." Meaning that Christ is obeying the laws of the land, but trying to show the spirituality behind this as to why it is improper. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And calling him a child, he put him in the midst of them and said, "Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Now, this is a different allegory to what St. Paul was talking about. St. Paul was talking about his childishness as immaturity, not purity. Christ is referring to this child as pure. And St. Cyricus, who we commemorate today with his mother Julitta, amplifies this purity, the purity of heart, that as Christ said in the Gospel according to St. Matthew earlier in the Beatitudes, "Blessed is he who is pure of heart, for he shall see God." And so St. Cyricus is able to see Christ. And so St. Cyricus is able to enter into the kingdom because he has this purity that Christ is talking about. Whoever humbles himself like this child, he is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So if we humble ourselves, not to be egotistical, not to be desiring praise, not to be desiring glory, but to be simple like a child who just wants to be with God, who just wants to love God as Father, Then we can have the kingdom of heaven. May the memories of St. Cyricus and his mother Julitta fill us with joy that we too may behold God in our sight. I hope that you've enjoyed today's spiritual calisthenics. Have a blessed and wonderful day.